Well, hello and good morning, church. We're going to be concluding our study in the Gospel of John today. Welcome to the Daily Word. My name is Kyle. I'm one of the pastors at Redeemer Bible Church. Thank you for joining us. So if you're just joining us starting now, we've been reading through the Gospel of John and we're in chapter 21. And we've just seen such an incredible, marvelous study of the life of Christ and Jesus as God incarnate, as our high priest, as the one who went to the cross and to the grave for us and who rose victorious. So as the story wraps up here, we get some kind of personal details from John, who wrote the gospel. We get some incredible stories of God's providence and of redemption. So we see here in chapter 21, Jesus appears at the Sea of Galilee. These are his disciples. They've met him already. But as we see, they're going to go out fishing. And when the day was breaking, this is in verse 4, it says, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples didn't know who he was. And they go out fishing, they don't catch anything. So he says, children, have you not caught any fish? Or you don't have any fish, do you? And they say to him, no. And he said, cast the net on the right-hand side of the boat and you will catch. So they cast, and they were not able to haul it in because of the great number of fish. Therefore, that disciple whom Jesus loved, the writer, John, said to Peter, it is the Lord. So when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put out his outer garment, for it was stripped for work, and he threw himself into the sea, and he swam to shore, and he embraced Jesus. And when they got on the land, Jesus had a charcoal fire ready, and he said, bring some of the fish that you've caught. So Simon drew up the net full of fish, 153 fish. And although there were so many, the net wasn't torn. This is a miracle. And part of what's going on here is Jesus is showing them a couple of things. Number one, they were to have left their fishing behind, and that the miracles that Jesus is showing them even here are going to happen even more so when they act under the power of Jesus as his fishers of men, going out. They could go out on their own effort all day long and see no results in the ministry. But by the power of Christ, obeying him, following his will, they would see a harvest, and they would see a multitude of men come to faith, which they ultimately saw as they ministered in obedience. So Jesus says, come and have a break. Come and have breakfast with me. None of the disciples ventured to question him, who are you, knowing that it was him. But this is interesting. Jesus in his resurrected body is cooking up some fish ready to eat breakfast with his disciples. So that's kind of just a fun note there. Well, this is the third time he's manifested himself to his disciples, and there's this motivation here in chapter 15 that Jesus wants to give to Peter. He says, so when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these others? And he said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said, tend my lambs. And he said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said, shepherd my sheep. And he said to him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was grieved because he had to say to him a third time, do you love me? And he said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, tend my sheep. And there's a couple of great things going on here. Number one, Jesus gave Peter the opportunity to redeem himself 3 times because he denied Jesus 3 times. He gives him a couple of different commissions for ministry here. Tend my lambs, take care of the young in the faith, take care of the children, take care of the ones who be gentle, be tender with my people. And then he says, shepherd my sheep. That's care for them, lead them, make sure that they are protected. And then he says, tend my sheep. That's go about the work of the ministry. That's teach my word. That's train them how to be righteous. This is a great call. This is Jesus being so gracious to a man who just a few days before had saved his own neck by denying Jesus. And Jesus says, let me give you a chance to be redeemed, and I'm going to put my stamp on your ministry. And in essence, we see Jesus' strength through Peter's weakness, which is just such a wonderful thing. So we have this closing section where Jesus says, truly, truly, I say to you, when you were younger, you used to gird yourself and walk wherever you wished, but when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will gird you and bring you where you do not wish to go. Jesus has given Peter and the disciples a little bit of a foretaste of what's coming. So somebody else will stretch out your hand and lead you where you don't want to go. He's showing him the cross, the means by which Peter would die at the end of his ministry and his life. And so he's curious. So, he says, get up and follow me. And so Peter's following him. He turns around. John is also following him. He says, well, what about this guy? Basically asking, is he going to die too? And Jesus said, if I want him to remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me. You don't. It doesn't matter. Every one of you is a servant of me to accomplish the work of the ministry. So if you die and he stays, let me use him. And in fact, that's very much what happened. Now, he didn't stay until Jesus returned, of course, but he stayed longer than the others. He did not die a martyr's death like the rest of the disciples. He lived to a ripe old age, probably not too happy about that, being in exile, but he remained faithful to the Lord, doing the work of the Lord as a prophet and giving to us 4 other books, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and the book of Revelation, as God gave that to him in his later years before promoting him to glory. So just an amazing testimony of the work of God through these disciples, finishing out in their lives and them being faithful to complete the work that Jesus had set out for them. So we see marvelous things in the Gospel of John, Jesus as Son of God, Jesus as God incarnate, Jesus as our high priest, Jesus as our Redeemer, the one who loves us beyond measure, and the one who will come back one day. So that's the conclusion of the Gospel of John. I would want to read it 100 times again. And starting tomorrow, we're going to venture into the first, really the foundation of the church. I would say the first history book in the New Testament, but it's really the second part of a 2-part book, Luke and Acts. The person Luke wrote the book of Acts as a history of the early church. So that's going to be really exciting. So join me tomorrow and we'll dive into chapter 1 of Acts. I'll see you then. Take care.